So I think it's about time we start. I would like to welcome you to another episode of Square Tables, the webinars from Isaac Netherlands chapter, and it's also sponsored by Nuria, Dutch Institute for IT Auditors. Today I'll be your host. My name is Ramzi Masri. I want to go through the fact that we have two great speakers tonight. But before we do that, I would like to go through a quick review of our housekeeping rules. So if you don't mind, once you get connected, mute your microphone and stop sharing your video because that affects the quality of our webinar. Make sure that the name that appears on the Microsoft Teams is the same first name and last name that you used to register. This is for the CPEs, basically. This presentation will be recorded and the slides will be also released after the session. One thing interesting, our two speakers would like us to have today an interactive session. So please be prepared to answer the polls, the questions. Also, raise the hand feature if you would like to ask a question. At some point, I'll be helping our speakers in doing so to, let's say, give the floor for someone and unmute. And of course, as usual, you're more than welcome to put your questions in the text box. As much as possible, we would like you to be interactive with us tonight. So without further delay, our two speakers today, Ami and Rene. Ami is a specialist in the intelligence and data analysis and with the company Isuna. I think he will be giving a quick introduction about it. And Rene is a management systems compliance expert, and he's the director for NEN Innovation Lab. And I think also we will be having a bit of a introduction for the both entities, Isuna and NEN. Ami, if you would like to take the floor, unmute yourself and start sharing your screen.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ramzi. I'm just going to make sure, the PowerPoint is up. Okay, I will share my screen. So everybody should see the start of a PowerPoint presentation. The first thing I'd like to say is thank you for joining us for this webinar, and thank you for this opportunity to tap into your experience, but also for the opportunity to share some of the work we've been doing and also the findings that we've had. I'll give you just a brief background about me. As you can tell, can tell by my accent, I'm British. I actually live and I'm based in The Hague, but at the moment I'm actually in the UK. And I work closely with our partners, NEN, with their innovation lab, and Rene Cowens, who's been a great help to us in the work that we do. Rene, do you want to just do an introduction?
Yeah, just want to say thank you for having us. I'm Rene Gouwens. Although I'm working at the Innovation Lab, I'm not yet the director, but
okay.
Maybe it's good to send this sheet into NEN. Yeah, I'm working at the NEN Innovation Lab, working with Ami on lots of things, and hope to get some good feedback this evening. So thanks for joining already.
So the agenda for this webinar is pretty standard. We're going to look at the background of NEN and Isuna, just to give you some context, and the context will help you understand what we're trying to do for the future as well. We did quite a lot of research when we were developing the partnership, but also the product as well. And what we want to do now is to share and understand if you're having the same challenges, and also to see what your feedback is on how we think we've solved some of those challenges as well. We want to make this quite interactive as well, so there'll be a number of moments where Rene or I may ask you for your views and opinions. And as we've talked already about, is if you want to put your questions in the chat, that would be great. Or if you want to raise your hand, you can ask us directly as well, or comment directly in the webinar. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide, and I'll pass over to Rene.
Here we are. Just to give you a quick view of our organization, for those of you who don't know us yet. NEN is a national standardization body. We facilitate the process of standardization and publish standards and support users implementing those standards. As you can see, it started in 1916, and so we're a royal company, and we're 106 years old nowadays. As NEN, we provide and we facilitate NEN, the Dutch standardization process, but we're also connected to Europe and the International Standardization Organization of ISO. So if you are looking at the topic of information security this evening, it's a NEN AN ISO standard. It means that in Holland we have a table, as you can see on the sheet, in which we try to collect all relevant stakeholders and ask for their input and opinions in drawing the standard. And we combine that with the visions and input that's being delivered through CEN in the European, in the other European countries, and we combine that internationally with all members that relate to this topic throughout the world through the ISO network. What you see is that we kind of manage a minimum of 34,000 documents, and all these documents are being reviewed periodically. And what you might have noticed, for example, is that although we're talking about the 27,001, the 27,002 with the measures has just been revised and been published in, I think it was March. So we have a new 27,002, and there's a new 27,001 upcoming in October, connected to the revision of 27,002. And that's how our process works. We talk in numbers, and we manage a lot of documents on a whole range of subjects. Next slide, please, Ami. So why am I here with Isuna? Well, like I said, NEN facilitates the standardization process, but also supports users in implementing standards. And what you see is we have our own generic solutions for our users, like our flagship product NEN Connect, in which you can manage your own standards collection. But of course, there are a lot of questions out there who have a more specific context and a more specific background, where using the standard is related to a sector or related to certain governmental rule on law and regulation. So what we see is that we can do it alone. There are good parties out there who can also support in implementing standards, and that's why we try to seek new partners to help us support users with a clear view and a good implementation of the standard. There's one extra thing that I would like to stress. In working with Isuna, we also try to find our feedback loop. So the contact with Isuna is also aimed at when Isuna picks up signals from the market on difficulties with the standards, on difficulties with implementation specific paragraphs or subjects in a standard, we can take that feedback and bring it back to our standardization committees. So there's a bigger picture involved in our cooperation.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you, René. Okay. So now a little bit about Isuna. We're a relatively young company, and what we started or formed about two and a quarter years ago. And what we wanted to do was really make cybersecurity easier to implement, and one of the key things was to make it less fear-based. My background is actually law enforcement, and when I started to work in the world of cybersecurity, I noticed that there were elements that really stopped engagement and also stopped people actually facing the challenge of cybersecurity because of how complex it was, but also because they were scared very much of the amount of work and the technicality of it. So what we wanted to do was really make it easier, and we try to look at lots of different methods on actually how to make it easier. When we were forming, that involved lots of research as well, which we did together with Nen, and then that helped us to build our partnership and relationship. So because we realized we were working towards the same outcome as well. What I'll do is move into just a couple of real context slides. These are just to ensure that, and this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone here either. So at a very simple level, there's three key types of attacks, and the majority of those are simple. There's some advanced attacks, and there's some very specific attacks as well. The latest data from HIS in their Cyber Readiness Report 2022 clearly shows that all elements of cybersecurity and cyber threats are actually increasing. And not just because there's more types of attacks, but even the standard ones are being used more against businesses. More so, the number of attacks by countries has increased pretty much across Europe as well. Germany has stayed the same, but they were targeted quite a lot anyway. The peak increase is the Netherlands, and that's something that to me is a little bit surprising, but it really does show that we need to be really ready for the continuous increase and be doing more.
Ami,
Yes.
before you continue, I see an interesting remark from Gilbert. Jill, I hope I pronounce it correctly.
No, you don't. It's Gilbert.
Gilbert, thank you.
Ami, I'm very curious about your remark that you say that that you experience fear-based things from companies, because I don't experience that at all. So where is it coming from, and what type of fear? Is it the cybersecurity fear or the fear for implementation, or what type is it? And did you research on that? Do you have numbers for that, or is it just a feeling?
Okay, well, a lot of this is qualitative. So it was when we were going to companies and trying to get them on board about cybersecurity. A lot of them had little experience in it, but the fear was generally about the cost of implementation and the amount of work. So we would talk to C-suite people or managers, and the majority say this is really scary for me. And this is where what we found was that a lot of walls would come up in dealing with or actually having some willingness to deal with cybersecurity problems.
Okay, because from ISACA, and I remember from training, my exam training for CISM and also for CISA, the word was always business value, and the trainer said, if you don't know the question, find the answer with business value in it. So exactly. I'm very curious that you experience fear and costs and whatever, and because I always experience when I talk with future customers of mine, I'm an implementation specialist, that they are looking for business value, not they are not fearing anything.
That's really interesting to hear as well. We'll come on to some of this as well, because there are different business values as well. But we found that there was also a lot of fear, especially from the decision makers when they were looking at, should we deal with this problem? Okay. Thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll move to the next slide, and there's a quiz time here, and Debbie will put in just 2 questions into the chat. So if people could just have a look at the question and give their best response if they could.
So if possible, can we ask all the participants, you should get a pop-up with the different checkboxes.
I have to flick between the presentation and the Teams just to see it. I'll just do that.
Yeah. So we have around
Well,
30% of the respondents now coming in. We're looking for more interaction. So please fill it up, guys. Maybe we'll give it another couple of minutes. We're past the 50% mark of the participants, but we're still lacking some interaction. So
well, it looks like the conclusion is quite clear.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a long
But
time.
Nevertheless, if we give another minute, guys, we have
Okay.
45 responses out of 95. So we still have 50 people. Please help us and add your responses if you don't mind. So we get a clear picture. Just a small reminder, all you have to do is like tick the boxes and then submit. Looks like the biggest struggle is around time indeed.
Okay.
Followed by expertise, followed by maybe other issues, and then the support. Course comes at the very, very last end, which is well, amazingly beautiful. Usually, and let's say traditionally, cybersecurity had issues getting the budget right, and to find that this is now up to now the lowest. That's actually good news. So we still lack some responses, but it's really good participation rate. So guys, would you like to continue or wait another minute for the rest of the participants to respond?
Should we put the next question on there as well?
Yep, could be. So Debbie, can you kindly help us with that one? So this is the second question. Are you currently using a 27001 implementation tool? Yes, no, or soon you will be using one. Hopefully we get a quicker answers to that one. So we're closer to 43 responses out of 96 participants. And still, let's say the answer no is pretty much prevalent.
Yeah.
Actually, we do have some dynamics there. We're up till 49 responses, if possible, and we can get the rest of 20 or 30 more responses. That would be really nice to know. Looks like the conclusion is no, but still, percentages changed because, like, yes became 16% before it was even minimal, and soon is now 2%. So we're up to 50 responses. If I can ask you to vote for which answer on the 27,000.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, shall I carry on, Ramsey?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
It's 51 responses, so I guess it's pretty much, statistically significant answer that no was the biggest one.
Okay. What we'd like to do now is just share with you some of the challenges that we found through our research. One of the problems we found was that the framework and implementation is complex. Some of the feedback we had was that it's very technical, and also when they were sharing or asking different resources to work on there was a lack of understanding. They also found that the framework has controls that are across the guidance, so they may be working on a control at one given time, and then at a later time they would be having to go back to it because the control or a control that was matched with that one was much further in the guidance. So that's one of the problems that we found. Does anybody have any comments on that? You can put them in the chat, or you can join in the directly by telling us.
I think if I can maybe start the conversation.
Yeah.
What I would say, the framework itself, of course, requires some mapping and knowledge, but also the scoping of the implementation. To which scope are you going to implement, and what's the target of the implementation? Maybe that's something from your research, guys, you can give us some hints on. I know some companies take some shortcuts by de-scoping a lot of the whole thing, and some, of course, they say, I want to get value, so they scope it much bigger, and then they get across a lot of other complexities. So maybe from that angle, we can start a discussion.
Yeah, but when with our research, we were very much talking on quite general terms as well. And one of the things that we did do through feedback was actually build a scoping section into the platform. So there's some things that we think we've solved these issues. What I really would like to know is whether people think or have faced these similar challenges as well. Yeah, and if there's no comments, we can move to the next one.
If I may?
Yeah.
Gilbert again. I think this is very interesting, as the poll said that almost nobody experienced a lack of expertise. So apparently, in the technical language and controls and complexity is not really an issue.
I thought it was higher.
No, I just want to comment on that, Gilbert. It's true that the outcome was lack of time was the biggest one, and lack of support. I think, if I'm not mistaken, lack of expertise was number two. But I think also in our poll here, we are more a bit biased because most of us are in the field, and maybe knowledgeable of the technical language. But what I know from other colleagues who were presented with, compliance issues, and they're not really very well aware how the ISO 27K works, they were indeed some issues. Maybe not the technical language. I might have some reservations on that one, but they didn't understand the controls, and in some cases. Having said that, I might redirect again to our speakers and ask them, like, in your research, who mainly reported technical language? Like, which job titles maybe told you, oh, okay, we had some technical language issues, and which job titles said like controls are across the guidance, and maybe a bit of clarification to the term controls are across the guidance would be also helpful.
With the controls across the guidance, I can really give a good example of how we solve that. So I'll come back to that one when we show how the platform works. With the technical language, this was very much from the basis of CISOs having to describe or get other resources to support the work that they were doing. And they were finding that it was very difficult sometimes to explain to people and get them to really clearly understand their tasks and what they should be doing against that framework.
Yeah, and maybe there's a slightly different point of view from the NEN angle, because of course we sell the standard, and a lot of things happen after an organization has decided to start with the implementation of 27001 and buys the standard and starts reading it. That's mainly from an end point of view, not the expert user, but really someone who tries to get a grip on it. And of course, you don't become responsible for implementing an ISMS, at least most of the time, unless you have a certain experience in that field. But we also see, and then this is just what we see at our courses that we give on implementing ISMS, that sometimes people are brand new in the area. And of course, then there's a big issue of the language, and there's a big issue of how am I going to translate what I'm reading here in chapters and in paragraphs who are ordered by the specific issues to my business processes and to the way we work. Yeah, how can I relate those controls to a specific process or a specific activity or a specific product that we have?
So mainly coming, let's say, from people new to a little bit the compliance field, right? That could be a good conclusion. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't think that's our main audience this evening, looking at the framework that you support with Isaka. But there are different kinds of users out there.
Yeah, can we maybe get clarity about the term, or let's say the sentence controls are across the guidance? Maybe a bit of shedding light there would be really helpful.
Ramsey, what I'll do, I will come back to it, but that'll be when I show how we fixed it on the platform, because it's a really good example on there as well.
Yep. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Right, so what I'll do is I'll move to the next problem because I'm aware of the time as well. So this is one of the things that was definitely agreed with on our research there as well. Many implementations take a long time. Tracking and checking is really difficult. So monitoring how compliant we are or seeing how close we are to being compliant. Many of the organizations we looked at, one, an especially large one, was still using spreadsheets to manage it and to look at how they were going to implement it as well. Part of that implementation difficulty was getting managing resources across different departments, not just the IT department, but also then getting them to have buy-in on the compliance issue and implementing it with them. Has anybody come across these issues? And if there's any comments, it's well worth talking through now. Okay. If there's none, I'll move to the next problem? Okay. Yeah. And one of the things that we're trying to do quite differently was that, and an issue that we found was that it wasn't possible to seek help or provide help to others. And this is quite a unique look at it as well, because I don't think people had seen this space as that, as there an opportunity for people, or whether that people should be doing this kind of thing. But what we found with the people that we talked to, the CISOs, they really did want to be able to say to other CISOs, actually, is this the right way of doing it? Or I've got a solution here that really worked, and can I share it with other people? So we wanted to really look at that and fix it. This also was mentioned that there's a lot of duplication of efforts, and that this increases the costs. And is there a way that we can actually start sharing these results so that it would be much easier and much cheaper to do? And that kind of feeds into the next one. It's really difficult to know what works and what doesn't. So they wanted to have this possibility to communicate maybe with other sections of the same company or with other companies of a similar type. And it could even be help on a specific issue. Has anybody thought of the same thing, or do you think it would be helpful if people could seek help? Or problem?
Gilbert, you have a remark.
Yeah, there's a question. So I've done more than 10 implementations of ISO. I see the thing of seeking help. I'm working in the hospital organizations, for example, and they made network for information security, where all the CISOs are coming together and sharing experience, and sharing also things like, if you do this, then we do that, and we share it later on. It makes the duplication of efforts much less. A very good thing. But it's only possible to share knowledge if you have more or less the same company context. The standard is not is very precise about that, and it's also logic that you work for company context. That's where you start. So you can only share things, in my experience, if you have more or less the same context.
Yeah, it's a great experience you had.
Yeah, and you're very much right as well. So what we're trying to do is, one, make this possible between companies, but also make it fit, or make it possible within sectors as well. So the example you give is great. The CISOs coming together, being able to, within the medical sector, to come together and help each other. But that, when you look at the previous situation with COVID, when people weren't allowed to go meet each other and so on, or to do it all digitally, it takes time and it's difficult. And what we want to do, be able to do, is maybe do it within a platform. Can we make it possible while that you're working on the issue live, to seek out help from someone who's done some similar work, or who may be able to help you with an issue you've got? And that's what we really wanted to do. Just to give you an example, we're now talking to the Dutch government, and what they like is that they can get their departments to talk when they're implementing ISO 27001, whereas that before they would have found that very difficult to do.
Yeah, it's on the level of the BO, of course, the specific standard for the municipalities, and how do we connect that level?
Yeah. And it requires scale, and it will require a lot of people signing up to this methodology. But in the end, the way that we see it is companies generally aren't competing on cybersecurity. What they're competing on is the business that they're in, but sectors and companies all benefit from each other being very safe. And when we talk to CISOs, when we talk to company leaders, they actually said, yeah, there should be communication between these companies, because if they're safe and we're safe, the sector is safe and we'll gain more trust with our clients as well.
Yeah, but working for more than 10 years in this type of network, I also see that most of the organizations are there to harvest, to get information and get examples, and are only a very few to share it. And you see also in a couple of years that the people who are on the upper hand and start to share, they stop with it because they don't get anything in return. So the balance is very difficult on a platform like that.
Yeah.
And also the other problem is that if somebody is sharing a non-validated policy document example, which it can duplicate over many organizations, and you get problems in many places. And people say, but it's the standard. Everybody is using it. Yes, everybody is using a wrong thing, and get it out then is very, very difficult. So I'm also looking into your opinion of how are you going to validate examples? Are you going to moderate? And are you going to rect people who say low quality, give low quality input?
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I'll move to show some of the platform, because I think that's where we'll get the best value feedback for us, but also where I can answer some of your questions as well. If that's okay by everybody, I'll move to just show what we're trying to do and seek some feedback on that. Okay.
I think you can do that. Go ahead, please. Oh, but you had your hand raised, or that was for the previous question?
It was.
Oh, okay. Yep. Then please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just have to stop sharing first, and then I'll move back. So, okay. So here you should see what we call the cybersecurity Isuna cybersecurity platform. I'll just explain how it works first. So at the top is the navigation space for the main platform area. The three key spaces for the CISO or for the implementation are assessments, maturity model, and improvements. We can change the language as well, but we'll keep it as it is in English for my sake. What on the left hand side we have the many different domains for cybersecurity, and within these we have different areas, and I'll bring them up. So here under human resources, for example, we have onboarding and exit boarding. Under onboarding and exit boarding, there's a main objective, and to achieve that objective, the users should move between these levels towards level 5. And to be compliant with ISO 27001, you should be at level 5. We've tried to keep it very positive, so all the language is positive. Level 1 is just knowing it, and by the time you get to level 5, it's continuous improvement and external review. It gives you steps to follow on achieving that objective, and users can also attach evidence. And when we talk about controls being across the framework, if we were trying to do this, we can actually say, okay, well, why are we doing it? And which controls am I going to achieve? By clicking this button, we can see that the controls that we're impacting upon are 7.3 and 27001, and then these different controls throughout that framework. Is that clear on how that works? There's a space where users can add notes as well, and adding notes gives them options, and the users can add notes in 3 specific places privately, so that they can leave notes for themselves and things that they want to be reminded about, maybe within the organization, so all the other, well, or they can go public, as we call it, and that's directly to the community, and we'll talk about that in a second. But this is the main assessment space from within the platform. But if anybody's got any feedback, that would be great.
I think it's clear, Almi.
Okay. Just a couple, 2 more things that we've done here is we've added these color spaces so that we can identify that the top domains are organizational, system software, technical IT, and incident management. Someone did mention a scope, and there is a scope statement that users can fill in, and this sets the scope of what the compliance will deal with. Okay, if that's all clear. Well, sorry.
And Ami, Gilbert asks, where's the organization context? And as you can see from the demo, the tool tries to not go in from the standard point of view, but from the processes point of view. And I would expect, but maybe I dare you too much, Ami, that the requirements on the organizational context would be somewhere in the light blue first processes concerning strategy and policy, or somewhere underneath.
Yeah. So here is about organizational strategy, policy, planning roadmap, and information risk management framework. That's very much from an organizational point.
Yeah, and there's a question from Abdel Haq. Can all data from the tool be exported to a generic format? I don't know if that needs some.
I understand the question. We've been asked that before. At the moment, the data is exported in PDF format, but we can make it specific to the user. So if they want it to a specific format, we can convert it to that as an export function. Once the users have completed their assessment, this produces a maturity report. The maturity report shows them how, it gives them a snapshot of how well they're doing at this given time. They can expand that to show which controls they've implemented, and they can also expand to show which evidence they've attached. So what they can do is start implementing all the compliance and the evidence for the compliance in one place. Over here, it shows you the level that you've achieved, the percentage of completion, and also an Isuna score, but that's for another demo, really. What we want people to do is also always think about improving. So there's an improvement section. Okay. On the improving section, there's a navigation bar, so we can go to the different spaces, but I'm just going to switch that navigation bar off for now, so it's clearer. In this case, this company on strategy is at level 3, and they want to move to level 5. To achieve level 5, the platform shows that they have to implement these 4 controls. The user has done a risk assessment on those controls to assess and prioritize the controls that they should do immediately. They can also add what the financial value is. We've left this one relatively open, so the user can define whether it's the cost of implementing that control, or it could be the cost of not implementing it should there be an attack. Okay. They can also manage their planning. And in this given example, and this is all fake data, so I am allowed to show you, you can actually add tasks to all the users that have signed up within your organization to the platform. You can name the task, you can look at which department, who you want to assign that task to, the date or the date range for that task, and a description. I won't save this one because there's plenty of example tasks there, and users can then communicate within the platform and start manage that implementation. Is that all clear? Are there any questions or comments?
Maybe a minor one from my side.
Yes.
There is, like in the previous screen, an impact, and the impact is monetized by value. Maybe I missed that during when you were explaining, but is that value an input, or that value is something that it's just an input, right? That you kind of estimate. Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's company specific.
Yeah.
Sure, but I just wanted to know if it gets calculated from something. But
no.
Thank you.
No. Okay. And then what we've added is what we call the help center or the community space.
Just before you go there, because there's one extra question on the assessment part, which is really interesting. Can you track the progress in different assessment periods? I think you showed it when you go from 3 to 4, you get extra measures.
Yes. So there is a percentage that you can follow as you increase your compliance, but there's also what we call the Isuna score, which is a mark out of 50. And that directly relates to a point scoring for each control. Okay. I hope I've answered the question there.
Robert, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was more looking like a sort of a graph that you can track the progress in.
Oh, okay. Well, there's graphical inputs and outputs on the dashboard as well. But in the improvements, if I go back to improvements, you can look at this in a Gantt chart format as well. You can see where there's dependencies or there's crossovers. Okay. I hope I was able to answer your question.
Yeah, thank you. And then the next question was, can you reuse the results from one assessment period as a starting point to the other one? So the next one.
I don't think I've ever been asked that one. Or so as you were working on it, you would be able to compare the progress you made from the last result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
At the moment, it's dynamic as you make progress. So as you make progress and then you've implemented controls, you have to go back to the assessment and click, because we do want it to make it at least a little bit manual. So you have to ensure that you've done those controls, but you can always compare the versions that you've saved. So if you've exported it as a PDF, that is date and time stamped, and it clearly shows you where you were at that given date and time. You can compare it to how you're doing maybe a month later.
And Ami, like you said, if asked, you can export it to any relevant export type, because there was also the question of Excel.
Yeah, so we can easily make it export to Excel as well.
Okay.
Hopefully you wouldn't want to do that and you would still keep it within the platform, but there may be a need as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick
I see
question
that.
from my side. Yeah, sorry. Could it be even like a feature request later on to have the progress maybe seen across time? Might be a good idea.
Absolutely. And this is the main reason why we're here. What we want to do is talk to and get feedback from the experts to see how we can make this better and better to directly help them improve and help them do their jobs. So if you're implementing, you think there's something that's missing, please feed it back to us directly. And we look at doing improvements all the time. So if you've got any feedback, we would love to have it. What we also want to do at the end, and we're kind of running out of time, but
Yep.
what we want to do is if there's anybody who wants free access for 6 months, where we're willing to provide it, we're going to give 3 licenses away for free, as long as they're willing to give us feedback on how we can improve it.
I know we're lacking time, but there's an interesting question that I do want to ask you.
Yeah.
Because it's connected to the evidence.
Mhm.
And I know because it's an information security world we're living in, the
Yeah.
question is, will evidence to substantiate be stored in the tool? But I thought from previous talks we had that you can also put there in a link.
Yes.
Or yeah.
So there's a number of options with the platform. At the moment, it's cloud-based, but you can either upload your evidence or you can upload just a link. That link is only accessible to you as a user within your own private network.
Okay.
What we also did here then was we built the community in the help desk space. So this is where when people are working on it, they can directly post questions or solutions to the community. And they can ask specific questions on the domains, and then they can get answers here from the community as well, or directly from us. And we've got someone who monitors it and checks and says, can we help the people that are having struggles, or can we share these solutions with the wider community as well? We've also got sections here because we do believe that there is an opportunity to build a cybersecurity community around a compliance tool such as ours and around 27001. What we can do is also add projects and challenges. So the projects could be if, for example, the municipality, the Bilbert libraries, some of the CISOs talked to us and said that there's a large weaknesses for cybersecurity in libraries in the Netherlands. So we can create a project space where CISOs can work together to provide solutions. We can also add challenges as well. So we can say, here are some of the new controls that are coming forward for the new version 27002. Does anybody want to provide input on there? And is there anything that people want to comment? You can also link to other users, you can see what their expertise is, and you can communicate within this community space.
And I think also important to relate to earlier remarks, the community can be close to your only accessible for the company, or you can open up to the whole world. Yeah.
And then what we've also produced is a knowledge center as well. And we've got some mechanisms in here because the question was, how do you know that the documents are trustworthy and so on? We have got a peer review system. So we can give points and scores to documents, but we will also monitor and assess those documents ourselves as well. We believe that knowledge centres and community spaces are only as safe and as usable as long as there's value from them. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that the value is there and that the documents are assessed and that people feel comfortable using these documents too. And the knowledge centre is basically where we want CISOs to share their expertise and their documents so that other companies can use them. For example, we produce a cyber threat assessment that we're happy to share and for other companies to use as long as our logo stays on there. And that's something that we think we will help a sector or any other businesses as well. Because we've got the partnership with NEN as well, we're able to upload ISO 27001 in its entirety and the different versions so that you make sure that you're working on the right bit at the right time.
Yeah, we have a couple of
Yeah.
questions, and I'm also aware of the time, but one of them is actually both of them are interesting. So I'm going to try and combine them a little bit. One is about the privacy of the information somehow, not from, of course, like a GDPR perspective or anything, but these are risks. So, Sergey, I hope I'm pronouncing your name, or Serge van der Schaft. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, but there is, like, his comment is like, since the tool comprises businesses' highest risks, can the tool be installed on-prem? I guess this is a cloud one, or how can we deal with the risks that are related to Isuna itself? Basically, we are talking about very critical information, and at some point we are giving it to your new platform. So that's one question. And just being aware of the time, Gilbert here asked another great question, is like, what makes your tool better or different from the many other existing tools? So let's maybe combine both of them. Privacy and security perspective, do we have on-prem or not? And also, like, how do you differentiate your tool from the others?
Okay, we can definitely do on-prem as well. So if that's a preference from any client, we can do that. What makes our tool different from others is that we've very much looked at it from a user and implementation perspective. One of our clients who does implementations, they assessed many different tools, and the feedback they had was that they were able to use and learn and explain the tool to their customer in a matter of hours, because it's very much from a user perspective. And we've tried to make the whole interface easy and the way that it flows in a very easy way. The other unique part is really the help center and the knowledge center, because we truly believe that we can build some solutions and that CISOs do want to talk to each other about some of the issues.
Okay, maybe one last question from my side. What would be the giveaway in terms of information that you would like to give us at the end of this presentation today?
Okay, the takeaway for everybody here is we really want to talk. We want feedback, and we want people to start looking at our platform and saying to us, this is how you can improve it. This is how it's going to make me want to use your platform. And that's why we are giving these free licenses away, because we want people to test it. We want people to feed back to us and say, this is how good it can be. And we also want to know what really works well, but also what doesn't work well. We're a very dynamic company, very agile, and we will build these improvements as quickly as we can. And we work very quickly. That's the key takeaway from me. I will just move past those and stop at this screen. So for more information about NEN and Isuna, you can click to there.
If you have the presentation, you have to switch because we don't see it, sorry.
Okay, I will back to... If you want to find out more about the NEN and Isuna partnership, you can go to the top URL. You can sign up to use our platform free for 14 days, which is just an element from it. But if you would like to help us improve the platform or to use the platform fully for free for 6 months, please contact me directly, and we'll be picking picking 3 users who we would like to give a free license away to.
Yep. Thank you. I mean, one last question before we close today. Do you also have the setup with Swift CSP controls? That's a question that came from Robert.
I have to refer to my technical guy. So this isn't
Yeah.
my area of expertise.
We'll get
Like,
back
sorry,
to you,
I can't.
Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
It
so
should be-
much.
It should be possible to map most of the controls. So
I'd have to talk to my tech guy, but I'm sure. Yeah.
I have a suggestion, Robert, if you don't mind. Maybe it makes sense that you would be one of the 3 lucky users to get the license and test. And I'm saying that because apparently there is a need on your side. It looks like it, and also there might be a lot of nice feature requests toward Isuna that they benefit from it, and also from the community that is already on the platform.
okay, thank you.
So with that, and due to timing, I would say thank you so much, our speakers. You did a great job. Thank you for today, and for all our audience. Hopefully, we see you very soon in the next Isaka Square Tables webinar.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Have a
having
great
us.
evening.